All right, so our 4.3 lesson is building a unit circle. And when we're done, our unit circle will look something like this. And you're going to have a big paper to fill this in on because this is way too small, too tight to fill it in yourself just on one of these charts because your paper is going to be really small. But let's go ahead and talk about this. So first of all, to build a unit circle, to know what a unit circle is, it is a circle with a radius of 1. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to point out to you that the radius of a unit circle equals 1. Okay, 1 unit. That's why it's called a unit circle. All right, so if our radius here is 1, look at this first one. If our radius here is 1, the distance to this point right here is out some value x and up some value y. All right, so if we think about this, the sine of theta is equal to opposite over hypotenuse, that is the y value over 1. And the inverse of that would be 1 over y. All right, so our cosine value would be adjacent over hypotenuse, which is x over 1. I'm not making the over 1 real big on purpose. And this is 1 over y. Our tangent would be opposite over adjacent, which is y over x. All right, so I am going to get rid of these little ones here because it's almost starting to look like they're a 1 or something, I mean a y or something like that on the bottom. All right, so going back, cotangent will be x over y, and there you have it, okay? So looking at the next slide. Now on this one, let's start with the angles. Now what I have up here in the corner, if you see this little purple mark, this is where we figured out all of these the other day. We filled in every one of these sides and angles, and we talked about them, where they're located with pi, with reference to pi. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to fill in all of these angles and sides. Well, the first one's easiest ones to fill in is 0 degrees. So you could have 0 or you could have 360 degrees. And then over here, notice we have the degree mark. This is 180 degrees. And you know straight up is 90 degrees. And straight down is 270 degrees. Wow, that little degree mark's barely hanging in there. And then over here, halfway through, you have 45 degrees. And then this mark is a 30-degree mark. You may or may not have realized that. This is 30. And then if we go another 30, okay, not 15. If you wanted to do 15, then do 15 more, you could. But this is going to put us at 60. Okay, so just in case, we did these, by the way, as, let's go back. This is going to be 0 or pi. I'm not filling the other ones yet on purpose, or 2 pi, excuse me. And this one over here is the same as pi. And this was pi over 2. Pi over 2. And this one down here is 3 pi over 2. And then this was 2 pi. So this one was pi over 6. And this one was pi over 3. Well, so for just a minute, so it makes sense why this is 30 and why that's 60 and why this is 45. First of all, I think you get it while it's 45. There's a couple ways to look at why this is 30. First thing is, this is made up of 6 sections. Let me use my highlighter. 1, and I'm going to go back and forth. 2, back to yellow. 3, back to pink. 4, back to yellow. 5, back to pink. 6. So 180 divided by 6 is 30. So there's one reason. why it's 30 right there. The next reason why it's 30 is because actually, if you remember why we had pi over 6, if we take pi over 6 and we remember how to multiply and get rid of the pi and change it back into degrees, we would have pi under 180 degrees. Pi's cancel. 6 goes into 18 3 times, and there's a 0 left. 30 degrees. So there's a couple of reasons why we have 30 degrees. So the next one is 45, and then 60 is the other. And if you put two of these together, you'll get 60. Put two together, you'll get the next 60. And put two together, you got 60 over here. So these are your marks for your 60 degrees. And there's 3 sets of 60 and 180. So that would be your 60 degree mark. Now, the next thing we want to do, the coordinates, you can fill these in, but before I fill them all in, we will get them all filled in. And you can use this page where you had them all to get them filled in if you need to look back at it. So first thing I'm going to do is take the reference angle of pi over 6. So this degree mark, which is pi over 6, is the same as 30 degrees. Now the reason I'm turning it back to 30 degrees is we just did special right triangles with a 30, 60, 90. Well, we know that if we have 30 here and that's a 90, this up here has to be 60. And I also know that the ratios are A to A on the hypotenuse and A root 3 down by the 30. Okay, A root 3. Now, what I do know is that the hypotenuse, every single one of these are a radius and they're 1. So that means this piece over here is equal to 1. So I can find out what A is. So if I know 2A is equal to 1 and I divide it by 2, then A is 1/2. And if A is 1/2, this side is 1, okay? A is 1/2. And this side is going to be 1/2 of square root of 3. Because I know that A is a half. So a half times the square root of 3 is just the square root of 3 over 2. That's the way I'd write it. I wouldn't keep a 1 in front of the square root. So what does this matter? Well, what this matters is I know the value of this point. Now, these little highlights are starting to drive me nuts, so I'm going to get rid of them real quick. There. They just needed to be gone. All right, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to say that this line right here, this is represented, this distance is that x value that I just found when the radius is 1 and that answer is the square root of 3. So I went out the square root of 3 and went over 2. I went up 1/2 because this distance was 1/2. All right. Now, if I do this again with a 45-45, and I think I have myself doing that on the next page, we're going to have to flip back to this. But again, you have this lovely big page that we're going to get filled in. And all I'm going to do is do the first quadrant first. Oh, by the way, I didn't fill in the easy one right here. This is a out 1, up 0, out 0, up 1, back 1, up 0, out 0, down 1. Okay, so there's all of those numbers. That was pretty easy. But let's look at the next page. Beep, turn the page. There we go. All right, so now I have the next one up is the 45-degree angle. There's my right angle. The hypotenuse is 1, and I need to label the sides. Okay, well, I used A before. Let's use A again because I have an X and Y involved. So the hypotenuse is an A times the root of 2 because it's a 45, 45. It's what it is. This side is a, and this side is a. So as soon as I know what a is, I know what a root 2 is. It's 1. But as soon as I know what a is, I know what my x and y will be. So 1 is equal to a times the root of 2. To solve for a, I divide by the root of 2. And I get a is equal to 1 over the square root of 2. But that is improper. I cannot have a square root in the denominator. So I have to multiply by the square root of 2 over the square root of 2. So a is equal to the square root of 2 all over 2. Okay? So that is my x and my y. So I'm going to flip back a page. And I'm going to fill in, this is the square root of 2 over 2 and the square root of 2 over 2. Now, going back to one more page, I have a 60, 30, 90. The hypotenuse is 1. Okay, wait a minute. If I know the hypotenuse is 1, do I have to reconfigure this whole thing again? Or can I know it's just the opposite of what it was a minute ago? If we go back up here, you can see that a 30, 60, 90, on the 30 side, it's going to be square root of 3 over 2. On the short side, it's a half, and on the hypotenuse, it's a 1. So if I go back and look at this, I am going to have, by the 30, is the square root of 3 over 2, and this side over here is a half. This is a half. This is square root of 3 over 2. Now, if you want to do the whole thing again, you can, but I say it's already done. So going back, that means this one will be out the distance. It's out a half. Oh, here they are right here. They just swap places, right? So this is out 1/2 and then up square root of 3 over 2. All right, now I've got these first filled in. Now, if you remember, we talked about when we wrote these out that there's this really cool thing that happens with like the square root of 3, how it reflects over and we get another root 3 dilly over here. Well, let's get these filled in real quick. We do. That's 1 square root of 3. This is 2 square roots of, 1 square root of 3. Pi over 3, and this is 2 pi over 3. I've had so many square roots, it's affected my brain. All right, so this is 60. So if I take 60 and I add in another 60 to flip over here, because this is an exact location on the other side of the y-axis, 60 and 60 is 120. Another 60 puts you at 180, right? Okay, so excuse me. So this is a 60, that's a 60. The next 60 is going to be down here. So 60 plus 180 is 240. And that's also going to give me 4 pi over 3. And then another 60, I'm going to flip it and go this way. And I'm at 5 pi over 3. And I add 60 to 240 and get 300. I add 60 again, and I'm back at 360 and 0 again. So I've hit that. Now, look at the way the values go as well. If in the 60, it was positive, if this was a positive 1/2, positive up 3, square root of 3 over 2, this is going to be back your x value. So it's negative 1/2 and positive, it's still going up. The y direction's the same way, square root of 3 over 2. And then if I will go down here, I'm going to reflect down below. I'm going to use a pink, maybe a blue highlighter. Let me see if I can make this kind of skinny. I want it skinny. Okay. And I'm going to reflect straight down here. Okay, that's my reflection. So this is going to be, they're both negative because look at the quadrant I'm in. So it's negative 1/2 negative square root 3 over 2. Now I'm going to flip it over here to this side, and I'm going to get, it's going out positive 1/2 in the x direction and a negative square root 3 over 2 in that direction. Okay? All of those are filled in. I'm going to go to green now, and I'm going to fill in all the square roots that are dealing with the pi over 4. Yikes, I don't see the pi over 4 there. That should have been pi over 4. All right, so we have pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3, and pi over 2. You notice how they're counting backwards, kind of? Kind of helps with memorizing, doesn't it? Okay, so this one's 2 pi over 3. This one's pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4. 4 pi over 4, 5 pi over 4, 6 pi over 4, 7 pi over 4. And now I need to add the 45 degrees in. This was 135 degrees. 45 on top of 180 will give me 225. 45 on top of 270 is 315. Okay, now I am going to fill in all these amounts. Now here's the cool thing with a 45, 45, you get square root of 2 over 2 for either one. So these are both going to be square root 2 over 2, square root 2 over 2, but one of them has to be negative. You're going out in a negative direction for the x values, so the x value is negative. Square root 2 over 2, square root 2 over 2, square root 2 over 2, square root 2 over 2. The only problem is I just made every single one of them positive. In this quadrant, both have to be negative. In this quadrant, the x is negative, the y is positive. All right, so the last one I'm going to do in red, and I'm going to match this one that I wrote originally in blue. It's going to be the last reflection going across here. This is going to be my other pi over 6. So I am 1 pi over 6 shy of being at 6 pi over 6. So I know this is 5 pi over 6. That's 6 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6. Technically 8 pi over 6, 9 pi over 6, 10 pi over 6, 11 pi over 6. Now these are at 30-degree angles away from their axis, from the x-axis. So 30 degrees shy of this is 150. 30 degrees past this is 210. 30 degrees shy of this is 330. So it's a little easier for me to think of my angles that way. All right, so we've got all of those in. Everything is in pink is being not transported. Oh my gosh, transposed, not that either, but reflected. I'm getting tired. It's about time to stop. All right, so now I'm going to end up with the square root of 3 over 2 and 1/2 again. So square root 3 over 2, 1/2. All right, now remember what's going out in this direction for this quadrant. The x's have to be negative, just like they were negative in the rest of the quadrant. And square root 3 over 2, 1/2. And guys, you're going to be committing this to memory, so you need to get this down. And then this is going to be positive square root 3 over 2 and a negative 1/2. Okay, that's all of it. Now, one thing I did not fill in, and I'm going to stop after this, is that positive angles, negative angles. Okay, all are positive. Over here, sine is positive. Cosine, tangent are negative. We can't write it all here. Tangent is positive. Sine and cosine with their little brothers, okay, are negative. Positive is cosine. Negative is tangent and sine. Sine, tangent. Sine, cosecant. I don't want to put all of those in there. It makes it more confusing, but you do need to know them. All right, we're stopping. 20 minutes. Yikes.